The Let Me Be Frank podcast is proudly sponsored by Glenwood. Glenwood are the UK's leading construction industry debt recovery agency.
Remember, no win, no fee with Glenwood Debt Recovery.
Find out more at glenwoodconstruction.co.uk. Welcome back to another episode of the Let Me Be Frank podcast with myself, Simon Houston, Frank McAvenny.
Hiya.
You alright?
I'm good,
well?
yes. Very good. Busy couple of days.
You were in the papers.
I
were
know.
in the papers last week.
I know. That's this week. It's
Well, no, last week, because this will be next week by the time it goes out.
Start
I keep
again.
telling you,
Yes.
I keep telling you
Oh, is
about
it?
continuity.
Yes.
No, it's fine. I keep telling you about continuity. This was
I know.
recorded a few days ago. This
Right,
isn't
okay.
live. But a very proud moment for the
Yes.
Let Me Be Frank podcast. There you go, Joe. You can hold it up.
Can
There
show
you
it.
go.
We've actually sponsored the Hamilton Ladies Football Club. We sponsored the shorts. As you can see, Let Me Be Frank on it. It's so yeah,
Brilliant.
I turned up and there's a few girls that played in the team there.
Yeah.
It's nice to see.
And did they know much about you?
Yeah, well, I asked them that. I said, how did you get roped into this? And the three girls said they wanted. One was actually, I think it was Paul McStay's niece.
Oh, really?
So he says, you know my uncle? And I said, yeah, good.
Oh,
Who's
fantastic.
your uncle? Paul McStay. I said, I couldn't pick a better one than that. So,
Oh, that's
yeah, it was
superb. I
great.
didn't know that. Well, there we go. So the Hamilton women's team, they won the
First game's against Thistle in August, so good luck with that.
Well, they won the League Two
Yes,
last
I know.
season, so that's them up in the top flight, and hopefully they got it more glory and with the Let Me Be Frank logo on their shorts. So that's great
Good.
news. So enough about all that just now, because this is an absolute treat, particularly for Celtic supporters, because if you think about cult heroes, the term cult hero was probably invented for this guy. We are delighted to have Paddy McCourt as a
Paddy,
guest.
how are you, sir?
How's things, lads?
Good.
Thanks for having me on. Hey, it's a pleasure.
Absolute privilege for us to have you on. I mean, as Simon says, cult, I would go better than that. I think you're an icon because how was it, 4 years you had there, and I thought it was.
That's a bit longer. I was longer.
It was I just thought you were one of these players that you don't see it in today's game. Maybe Jota a wee bit when he gets the ball, people stand on their feet. But there's not many players do that now, you know, that get you off your backside, you know, and you've done it every time you got the ball, Paddy, which was brilliant for being a Celtic supporter and ex-player, but I loved just seeing you getting the ball and running at people. Do you think in football it's a dying art now? You know what I mean? You don't see many people do it now, do you?
No, it's definitely something that's going on in the game. I think there's several reasons for it. I think there's too much coaching in the game now, you know, from an early age, where, you know, I was probably 15 or 16 before I knew what a coaching session was. We played in the street for hours and hours a day, and then we had our boys' club that we maybe went there for an hour and then maybe had a game at the weekend. That was the sort of height of our, you know, structured football. Everything else we've done in Shantallow, where I was born and raised, was on our own, you know, with the ball, with your mates, and, you know, a lot of the time with older players, which, you know, always helped me in terms of, you know, the balance that I was able to create for myself and sort of dribbling skills, because when you're playing with older, bigger, stronger players, you have to find a way of, you know, getting by them and potentially not getting knocked on the concrete or the gravel. So I think all them years of just playing in the back square and playing in the street, you know, allowed me to, you know, have the confidence to, when I did step on the pitch, to take what I learned, you know, in the street on the pitch. And as I say, and as you say, sadly, it's something that's not seen in the game as much, but I think when players do it now, it's more appreciated. And
Yeah, I
you know,
think so.
we see some of the top players that can still go by. Man, you look at the young lad Yamal now coming through at Barcelona, looks to be an ex-superstar. So it's still a vital component they have in the team. And you know, I would urge young players that, you know, have an ability to do it, they continue practicing it.
You use the word balance yourself there, Paddy, and that's what I always think when visualising you in one of your mazy runs. You never looked as though you had electrifying speed. but he also looked as though the ball was never ever going to be taken off you, and it was you could go right or you could go left. You played in the left wing, but you probably scored most of your goals with your right foot. Is that fair?
Oh, definitely. I'd be predominantly right-footed. I could use my left at a certain level, but definitely my strongest foot was my right. And I was probably just at the start of your sort of inverted wingers, as they're called, where managers started to use, right-footed players on the left and left-footed players on the right. If you go back to the clubs and the teams I would have watched, sort of the days of your Ryan Giggs and David Beckham and, John Barnes left-footed playing on the left, and, it really started to change then as I was coming into the game, and it sort of suited my play because I didn't have blistering pace where I could get outside a fullback and get across into the box. I actually, believe it or not, liked having bodies around me, and I could use another body to get by the next body, because when you're in a tight space, sometimes defenders don't know whose job it is to close you. And if you get in around them, you can move and you can shift up your body weight from side to side quite quickly. It can become an advantage. Sometimes if it's just you in a one-on-one situation, it can be harder to get by a defender. So sometimes I like 2 or 3 to get by.
Yeah.
Did you ever, during a game, maybe early on in a match, think, I'm in the mood today, I'm going to do something special? Or did you ever sort of sense something was going to happen?
You could sense off a fullback. So, and Frank will tell you this, playing against defenders. See a defender that you'd given a real going over a time before, you could sort of look at him and you knew he wasn't looking forward to this. So days like that, you were sort of rubbing your hands going, he's beat here before you even get on the pitch. And to be fair, you try to beat him up even more, because you wanted to leave that sort of mental scar on him that, anytime you come up against me, you may forget about it. And when you get to sort of a decent level of football, any wee small advantage. So even if you were 3 or 4-0 up at Celtic and there was 10, 15 minutes to go and you knew this fullback was suffering, you wanted to hurt him even more, because you wanted him to feel as if, I never want to come up against that man again.
Sure.
I used to tell them, Paddy, in the tunnel and all that on the way out, you're crap, I'm doing you today and all that. I used to wind them up just to get them, so they're going to try and come through me, get them booked early doors, and then you can do what you want basically to them. Just torture them for 8-9 minutes or something, which I loved. I was going to say, you're talking about not having pace. You remind me, and I'm going to give you a great compliment here, Paddy, you remind me of a boy I played with at West Ham, a guy called Alan Devonshire. He wasn't blistering pace, but honest to God, he was up there with the best, because he could just dip his shoulder and go by 2 and 3 players, as you say. He just used to go by them, and you think, you're not the quickest in the world, how did you do that? And it's obviously a talent. So I compare you to him in many ways, so that's a great compliment. Take it from me.
No, I appreciate that, Frank. No, I think when I say that I wasn't the quickest, what I mean is, over a sort of longer distance.
Yeah.
Over 5 or 10 yards, I could get up, a certain level of speed quite quickly, which allowed you to get by a man. Now, I would have never won a 60, 80 or 100 metre sprint, but over 10 or 15 yards, I could always get up, from basically a stand and start to enough to get by a man and then continue the run. And, as I say, I never relied on pace where I tried to beat someone over a distance. So I was never sprinting to try and go by someone. It was get up a bit of speed, get by someone, change direction, up speeds again. And that was my sort of strength, where I could sort of dribble and, use that type of attacking play where I sort of knew what I was good at and what I wasn't.
The thing is with you, I just can't. I try to vision you into today's team, say, for Celtic. I think Brendan would be pulling his head out, because he'd be wanting you to pass it sideways and backwards and keep the ball, and that's not you. That's not in your DNA. When you look at you, you just run at people. Or if you see a pass, how many times did you try a pass and it didn't come off, but then you try and get the ball back, but you still tried it, and that's what I liked about it. Today's game's all about retention, and it's not good to watch some of it.
I think a big part of that, Frank, being honest for myself, was I was never a regular, even though I was in Celtic 5 years. I was never a regular. I think at one stage under Neil Lennon where, I played maybe
Yeah.
15 or 16 games in the span. But, you know, I always had it in my head when I got on the pitch, whether it was for 90 minutes or 20, that I had to catch the eye. I had to do something that someone else couldn't do. So, like, me going on for 20 minutes and just keeping possession and just passing it back,
It's not you.
it's never going to get you anywhere where you need to
No.
be. And I felt that any time I entered a pitch, I always had something to prove. And as a football player, I think that's what you always should do.
Yeah.
When you get too comfortable or think you've landed, I think that's you in trouble. So that's probably why when you looked at me or fans looked at
Yeah.
me, no matter what the score or what the minute was, if I got the ball and I was in a one-on-one situation, I was trying to beat the man. I wasn't turning around going back to the fullback.
Sure.
No.
And that's something now that when I'm coaching, when I'm talking to our wide players or attacking players, when you get the chance to stand someone up or when you get the chance to get a shot away or get a cross on the box, don't turn it down and take the simple option because, in my
Yeah.
opinion,
Yeah.
anybody can do that. People who are willing to take risks and really go and try and hurt teams are valuable in any sort of level of football.
It's called entertainment, and I don't think a lot of people do it now. I remember we were talking to Lenny, and I says, I loved entertaining people, and he says it's a word that doesn't get used in football now. Now, how bad is that? I mean, you're there to entertain that crowd.
Completely.
They're paying good money, although they want you to win. They want Celtic to win in a certain way. I was fortunate to play with good teams that wanted to play football. So I was very fortunate. I just don't know how I would have done in a team that just all about possession.
No. Can I actually cut in a wee bit here and ask? We'll obviously want to talk about your Celtic career in depth and your favourite goals and all the characters that you played with, of which there will have been many. But if we go back to you being a young boy in the streets of Derry, what does Celtic mean to you then? You were a Celtic supporter, is that right? When you were a lad?
I was a Celtic supporter. The whole street where I was from, the whole area, would all have been Celtic supporters, Simon.
Aye.
Now, the first memory I have of Celtic would have been my local youth club going across to a game, and it was probably mid-90s. And, from then on, it was always a dream of mine to play for Celtic. Now,
Yeah.
I never ever went back to another game because for whatever reason, I just didn't get across, or my own football took me away to England when I was 16. But
Sure.
experiencing that sort of euphoric feeling in that stadium that time at sort of 11 or 12 years of age, it really opened my eyes, sorry, to the real elite level sort of huge club football. Because before that, the biggest stadium or the biggest crowd I would probably have been at would have been Lansdowne Road for an FAI Cup final that my older brother Harry had played in. So they see that stadium, with such a passionate support and real, top quality players. Henrik Larsson had just joined at that time, and he was just really starting to make a name for himself at that time. And it really gave me that drive and desire then to somehow want to play in them arenas and play in front of them theatres.
It's a thing that I keep trying to tell. You can't explain it walking out or walking through the doors of Celtic Park. As soon as you walk in the doors, it's as if you've got Big Jock and Oriam looking at you.
Aye.
There's this aura about the place. As soon as you walk through the front door.
Do you know what I think, Frank? And I always tell this to people. See how you're treated by the staff at Celtic Park. It just makes you feel as if you're 10 feet tall, and once you spend a bit of time there, you get to know them, and that job to them is more than anything in the world. It just means so much to them, and how they do their job and how they treat people. When my family would have been coming over from Ireland, and the girls in the lounges, and the 5 years you were there, it basically just felt like all a dream, because you walk onto an amazing training ground, you get amazing food, you get all the top treatment of top, level staff. And then you go out and you train in amazing football pitches. And then on a Saturday, you get to play in front of 60,000 people. So for 5 years, it just felt like a dream come true for literally 5 years. And listen, there's obviously pressures and there's obviously bad times when you lose or you don't get the season you want. But in terms of living your life and being paid actually to be in an environment it's just an incredible place to be.
How did it feel? I'm jumping ahead of myself a wee bit, but how did it feel when that song, when you first heard that "Don't Sell My Court" song? And do you remember? Do you remember what game it was when it was first properly sung?
I do, and it was actually a pre-season, or sorry, an end of season testimonial
It was down in
in
Norwich, wasn't it?
for a Norwich player
Aye,
called Adam Drury.
aye.
I had I had been linked with Blackpool, I think it was at the time, and I think they had made a bid, or they were talking about making a bid in that summer. So that obviously fed through to the supporters, and then literally from minute one to minute 90, they sang that song.
Oh,
And
it was so
at
funny.
the
I don't.
start, I didn't really know what it was. I
Aye.
didn't really know what they were singing because I hadn't heard it before, and then someone told me, and I went from sort of half smiling to being proud. And
Brilliant.
funny enough, every time I meet one of them Norwich players that played in that game since, they always bring it up, and that's the sort of lasting memory of his testimonial, that song.
It was so funny. Frank, you were maybe down south, but at this particular point, but it was Celtic were playing in Norwich for, as Paddy said, for this testimonial. And I think the game was streamed because I remember watching it and listening to this song, as he said, from the first minute to the 90th minute. Don't sell my court, Paddy McCourt. You just don't think you understand. If you sell my court, Paddy McCourt,
Yeah.
you're going to have a right in your hands. And even the Norwich fans on Twitter were all getting right into it.
Is that right?
I remember one guy tweeting saying, I don't know who Paddy McCourt is, but you better not sell him. It was fantastic.
Aye, brilliant.
But that
But
must have been
it's-
that must have been a real kind of pivotal moment in your time at Celtic when you realised you just appreciated how much the fans loved you.
Simon, honestly, and I'm not just saying it, I've said it many times previously. You know, anytime I've been, whether coming on the pitch, off the pitch, at a charity dinner, and anything, I get a sort of rousing reception that sometimes I go, is that warranted, or why do I get such a warm welcome? I actually remember the time I was across it was a charity dinner, Stan Petrov and James Muller. It was a charity game, and they had the dinner on the Friday night. So Jerry McCulloch was just going around our table. So you had much bigger stars than me there, and all of a sudden he comes to me and I stand up to do the interview, and the whole place erupts. And
Brilliant.
it was actually a funny one because you could see across the table Stan Petrov explaining to Hristov Stoichkov who I was, because he couldn't understand that, the reception that I had. And, that's again another pinch yourself moment when you're sitting across from a truly world class player like Hristov Stoichkov and sharing a pitch with them and Larson. And again, it's just a club that makes dreams come true. And, thankfully it made a lot of mine come true.
You must have seen I was going to say mock-up, maybe it was a mock-up, maybe it was a genuine picture, but there's one of Messi lifting his Barcelona top up and he's got a Paddy McCourt t-shirt under it. You seen that one?
I seen that, yeah. I
Absolutely
seen that.
brilliant.
Right, but you can tell just the way you're talking how passionate you are about Celtic, and how proud you were to pull on the hoops, and there's not many people do that. I mean, we've spoke to a few ex-Celtic players, and the passion you've got just with talking about it is brilliant, Paddy.
Listen, it's just the impact that it left on me, and I'll be honest. Before I joined Celtic, I was a Celtic supporter because everybody supported Celtic where I was from. But and a load of my Celtic mates now think this is mad. We all supported an English team too because sort of before Sky, it was only match of the day that you really had.
Yes.
So my two older brothers were Liverpool fans, and then we all supported Celtic. Then when Sky came in, you got the Celtic Rangers games, but again, it was very few and far between before you seen Scottish football in my early years. And then, once you join the club, you just become immersed in it now, and it's the first result, obviously, and apart from the team I'm working for, it's the first result that I'm looking for at the weekend. And if I can, if we're not playing or my son's not playing, then it's just the game you try and get watching at the weekend. And it just leaves such an imprint on you that you're so thankful that you had the time and the memories, and not just for me. You speak to my whole family.
Yeah.
In terms of even cousins that come over, aunties, uncles, brothers, sisters, and how everyone was treated there. During my time there was brilliant, and the memories we all have are really class.
So when you arrived at Celtic, is it fair to say you were quite a kind of quiet, insular person compared to a lot of your teammates? I don't.
So was I.
Aye, very good. But is it fair to say you weren't the most outgoing, and even maybe shy, perhaps? I don't know. Would that be fair to say?
Probably from the outside looking in, but certainly not from inside the building.
No, I've been out with him. No, definitely not.
So, because I was going to ask, when you went into that changing room, there was some pretty big characters, and you had a young Scott Brown, for example, would have really started to make his name at the point you arrived. That had been 2008. I think Bruni had been a year or so at that point. You had Commons, Mulgrew, and who were the main kind of standout personalities that you can think back on?
When I first joined, Brownie had just signed the previous year, so he was just going on his second year. At that stage, Arthur Boric was still there.
Oh, of course.
Nakamura was still there. And Big Jan Vennegar Hesselink. So it was sort of coming towards the end of Gordon Strachan's time, which obviously no one knew at the time, but big personalities, Gary Caldwell, Stephen McManus. But do you know what really struck me when I first came in the dressing room? How down to earth everyone was, and how nice they were, and as a Celtic supporter, you're going on and you're not knowing what to expect. As I say, I came from the League of Ireland, where everyone was good lads and they worked hard and they try to be the best they could be, but ultimately everyone was pulling the right direction. There was no egos and anything like that. And what really surprised me was how similar the Celtic dressing room was. And, that sort of helps you settle in quite quickly, because I was quiet in a way that I wanted to get in, find my feet, check my surroundings out, and then, you tend then to gravitate to, people with similar personality to you and people, you'll get on with. But getting on with most people, near enough every person, was very easy. And, I think once you get out there and you start getting your confidence on the pitch, that builds friendship as well. And look, let's be honest, the best way of building friendships too at a football club is when you get a night out in your first pre-season.
All right, let's hear more. Let's hear more about that.
Yeah, well, it's the same back.
I can't remember anything specific, but everyone lets their guard down after a few drinks, and you start loosening up, and you start seeing a real different side to people, and then you have a bit of crack and a bit of laugh, and carries on the next day, and you're laughing. So very quickly I settled in very well, and we had a good sort of young group of players as well. We had Darren O'Dea and Aidan McGeady, and as I say, Brownie was there. Believe it or not, he's younger than me. I know he doesn't look it, but them lads were all there. Charlie joined a couple of years later, but we had a good group of young players there who were obviously very talented, but all great lads, and made it very easily to settle in.
What about Naka? What was Naka like to be around? I know obviously there was the kind of language barrier and so on, but did Naka enjoy a night out?
No, not that I can remember. I can't remember being on any nights out with us. He was, as you say, very quiet, an absolute genius with football at his feet. But no, I don't remember him socialising too much. Listen, he might have came along for a meal or something like that, but he certainly wasn't standing on Suckley Hall Street at 3:30 in the morning or the rest of it.
That's where he went wrong.
Shouting at a taxi.
Naka in the training pitch, Naka must have come up to you and said, "Paddy, where am I going wrong? Give me some tips."
Yeah, it'd have been interesting.
Listen, he was probably, and Frank will know this, like, you come across some real incredible players in your time, and ones that always stick in your head. And if you look at Naka's left foot around that time, there wouldn't have been many in world football that would have been as good. So, for for Celtic to have him for the period they had. And the one thing that always stood out for me, and something I always tried to do when I was playing, was he never looked under pressure. He always looked to have time on the ball. And,
Space.
that's not an accident. That's a skill in itself, and real high level player.
And Arthur Boric as well. I mean, I've heard a few stories about him over the years as well. But did you ever witness some classic Boric moments? I know he didn't. Someone told me once he didn't like players trying to take the piss out of him in training, chipping him.
I don't think there would have been many trying to take a piss out of him, to be fair.
I know. I'm pretty sure he could handle himself.
Yeah. I think we heard the way we set to with Aidan McGeady, but that'd have been so one-sided it would have been untrue.
What was your Boric recollections?
I actually find Arthur a good fella. I find him quiet.
Yeah.
Not the same persona that the Celtic fans might necessarily have from, especially in around the training ground. Listen, always good company on a night out. Come on, trained hard. Obviously, some mornings like we've all done. Maybe come on a wee bit under the weather after a lit enough night out. But like as a goalkeeper, he's probably the best I've ever witnessed or had the pleasure of playing alongside. But as a fella, I always get on brilliant with him. We played cards together. We were in a card school, and he was quite witty as well. And, he was just a good fella. But the incident you're talking about there is something happened in training, and Arthur and Aidan had a bit of disagreement, and Arthur's made a beeline for him in training and sort of swung, and it was broke up pretty quickly. And to be honest, it should have been left there and then. But when they come into the change room, man, Arthur has come over and he said to Aidan something like, "Sorry, I missed you out there," and then he's went to hit him, and I think he sort of clipped him and walked on the shower. And then Aidan, being Aidan, in fairness to him, he couldn't let this go, and he's got up, ran in the shower after Arthur, and when he's got in there, he must have slipped, because by the time me and Barry Robson come on, they try and separate them. Aidan was on the floor and Arthur was standing over him, just about to give him a body a boot. But to be fair, I don't know if it was sort of brains or brawn in Aidan's point, but he's certainly a braver man than I am, because I wouldn't have been chasing him back in the showers, anyway.
Yeah, it'd have been soapy fight. That would have been great.
Right, a quick word about our brilliant sponsors, Glenwood Debt Recovery. If you run a business, especially in the construction industry, and you're fed up chasing unpaid invoices, these are the people you want on your side. Glenwood are specialists in business-to-business debt recovery. They work properly, professionally, and they've got a long list of very happy clients who've had their money sorted quickly and fairly.
That's right. If you do the work, you deserve to be paid and get paid on time. Simple as that.
So if you want to find out more, or you need a wee bit of help with a tricky customer, just head to glenwoodconstruction.co.uk.
And don't forget to tell them Frank sent you.
Lots of things to talk to you about, but obviously when we think of Paddy McCourt, we think of fantastic goals. So he scored 9. Was there any that you can remember that weren't brilliant? Any tap-ins in those 9?
I can't, to be honest, Simon, I can't really remember any of them apart from my first one, which was Falkirk away in the cup, I think.
I remember that, yeah.
And the first one I scored at Celtic Park was against Hearts, and they're the two that I remember the most, because the two that meant most to me, because obviously your first one is your first one that you've ever scored for Celtic, and then the first one at Celtic Park is the first one that you've ever scored at the stadium that all them years ago was at the game. Visualising yourself doing it and imagining it, and to do that was pretty special. And I remember sitting that evening and thinking that if I never ever played or kicked a football again, then no one can ever take that feeling away from me, what that felt like. And they actually have dreams about that, and be at the stadium and watch them players do it, and then finally, after some pretty heavy setbacks in my earlier career. They made me think that dream had passed. They actually finally do it, and feel what that was like, and it was quite emotional. But it was a feeling that I'll never ever forget.
Brilliant.
So before we go on to talk more to Paddy, just a reminder to everybody, please hit the subscribe button. It's free to do it.
It's all free.
It's all free. And follow us on social media, all the usual places. We are very visible, more visible than ever on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everything else. And hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you a penny. And we'll keep delivering. Well, Frank will keep delivering the goods.
Get
and
a
he's done
guess.
it again.
I get a guess. That's all right.
My favourite goal of yours, and not just because I was at the match, but it was against St Mirren away, and I think you picked the ball up almost, it can't have been far away from the halfway line, and you just cut through the middle, beat about 2,000 players. Then it looked as though you were heading away from goal, and you're thinking he's not going to be able to score for that angle, and it was a really tight angle across the keeper. It was absolutely sensational. Is that how you remember it? Maybe it was the 2000.
I do remember that one, and to be honest, when I watch it back now, I have to say that some of the defending was suspect, to say the least. But I think the best part about it, Simon, probably as you say, was the finish, because the angle was tight, and sometimes when you go on a run, like that, maybe a 40, 50-yard run, you don't have much power at the end of it, but I managed to just get my hips around it and smash it across the keeper in the far corner. But no, it was a good goal. But I think the St Mirren defenders watching it back too will be.
But the thing is, I understand that, but we were talking about it earlier. The thing is, they'll be panicking when you get the ball, so they're not going to commit themselves.
Don't jump in, is that phrase?
You know what I mean? They're not going to jump in case you just skin them. So the worst thing you could do is back off you.
And also,
and I suppose that's what happened.
And also, if you're playing against defending against a really, really one-footed player, then you just show them onto the weak foot. But they wouldn't have known what to do with you. If they try and show them that way or show them that way, they'll still.
I'd have probably done
that's a fair point, but if you actually look back at one of them, he actually lifts his knees in the air and does like a jig. I don't know what he's doing, but I think that's what I'm sort of.
Yeah,
I think that's what I'm hunting at. I don't know what he was doing, but
maybe he's celebrating because he knew he had used his first goal in the sweep.
Yeah, maybe he was getting out that night. It was his wee jig.
Oh dear! So lots and lots of highlights, and obviously you made your international debut, I think, when you were a Celtic player as well. There was a difficult time for you too. That horrible moment where Neil Lennon, yourself, and Niall McGinnell had bullets intercepted in the post. That must have come as a really weird sensation that could happen to somebody just for playing football.
Well, actually, Simon, I actually made my debut for Northern Ireland when I was at Rochdale when I was 17. Now I never got another cap for 7 years after it until I joined Celtic.
Right.
But it was a situation where you don't ever feel that's ever going to be part of your career or part of your life. When you choose the career of obviously football and that type of thing, it was definitely something that was strange. I suppose the fact that there was three of us and you weren't on your own, helped you take a bit of comfort from it. And at the time, Lenny was the manager, and he had obviously suffered pretty high-profile incidents like that before. So having him there and having the ability to speak to him about his experiences on it, and he was pretty calm with it, which helped me become calm with it, and it was just one of them things. And thankfully it was a bit of a storm in the teacup, but nothing ever came off it, and it seemed to disappear pretty quickly. But I think what you said, strange. It is a strange thing to happen, and it was difficult at the time because my family were still obviously back in Ireland. Yeah. Obviously, my mum and brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, and my mum was pretty worried and stuff. But look, as I say, thankfully it went away as quickly as it came.
Did anyone get arrested for that? Did anyone get interviewed or arrested for it.
Yeah, I think from recollection, I don't have that right in front of me, so I don't want to get it wrong, particularly when it comes to court cases. But I'm pretty sure it was that there were arrests made and it was all dealt with. But we can check that. Aye, but do you think that would have happened if Paddy McCourt had carried on playing football and not gone to Celtic and maybe just carried on playing in Northern Ireland at club level and been capped? Do you think that would have still happened, or do you think it was because you joined Celtic?
Listen, I don't know the reason for it. I just know it was off the back of we had played Rangers in a game around New Year, and we obviously beat them, and then it was pretty quick after that. So whether it was because of that or whatever reasons, look, it's not for me to say, but look, it was just a situation that wasn't nice. It happened, and you get through it, and it's not something that should happen in sport at all, no matter who plays for what club. And it was disappointing because I always had, even afterwards, a great rapport with the Northern Ireland fans, and never did I ever feel not wanted or under any kind of pressure, apart from playing and getting results. So it was just an isolated incident that shouldn't have happened. But you know what? It's not something that I hold any bad blood over towards anyone or anything else. It was just something that happened that shouldn't have happened. And as I say, thankfully it was forgotten about pretty quick, and we were able to just move on.
And thankfully you had Lenny there to talk to you about it, and as you say, that calmness just rubbed off on you. So yeah, fair play.
Now, I want to ask you about happier times, because I kind of actually forgot about this, but you captained Celtic famously in a cup final.
I did actually. Myself and Charlie actually were over for the semi-final. I was over with Charlie McGrew, and we'd done a Q&A in a couple of the lounges, and I was actually saying that was my last ever game, for Celtic. And listen, it was only for 10 or 15 minutes, and in the cup final, when I was coming on, I think it was Joe Ledley at the time, gave me the armband. So look, again, just another surreal feeling and surreal memory to look back on. I've still got the jersey, and I got all the lads to sign it afterwards. And if someone had said to me that I'd have played for Celtic for 1 minute, I'd have been over the moon when I was younger. Now, if someone had said to me that I'd played 5 years, over 100 games, captain in the cup final, won league, scored at Celtic Park, then again, it was just another just another situation where all part of the 5 years I had there. And that for me really is much. Look, the game was dead and buried, and it was sort of a nice gesture from the manager to put me on. But they wear that armband for, as I say, even 10 minutes in a cup final. It was just an incredible feeling, and all these things, I'm just so thankful for that I was able to experience.
Who was the manager? Was it Lenny?
It was Lenny. Was the manager. Yeah.
I was against Hibs, wasn't it? 2013.
Do you know? It's something you've got over me. They wouldn't even let me captain the team in training. Never mind. so you've got something over me. It must have been wonderful to put that armband on. It's a great honour, isn't it?
I had captained the team a few times before for shorter periods and games, league games and stuff. But to get the armband on a cup final, which was probably barring anything drastic happening, was always going to be my last game for the club, was special. And I do thank Lenny for that, because we had loads of discussions in previous months about my game time hadn't been what I wanted. I just turned 29, and he had said that he'd want me to stay for at least another year, and I had said no, that I wanted to move on. I didn't want to outstay my welcome. That was a big thing for me, because I hadn't played a lot that year, and as I say, I'd enjoyed a great relationship, and I wanted that to continue. And I do believe that players sometimes outstay their welcome at a club, so I didn't want that for me, and to get that 10 minutes of just being captain and
brilliant
in a cup final on a day that was sun was shining, and the team had played really well. I think we were 3-0 up at the time, and that was just the icing on the cake.
Wonderful.
I think you're the same as me, Paddy. I couldn't stay at a club if I'm not playing every week. I've got to play. You know, I just had to. Yeah, I had to play.
I did, Frank. I did, being honest. You know, because I probably stayed at Celtic. The first year I was in reserve mostly, right, and then the next 3 years I would say I was, getting games, but I wasn't a regular, but getting enough to keep me content.
Yeah.
And also the fact of I just didn't want to give up what I had at Celtic in terms of everything around the football. You know, my family coming over. I love living in Glasgow. You know, I love coming on the training ground every day. I love my teammates. I love the relationship I have with the fans. So, sometimes
it's hard.
The playing wasn't going to be not playing every week wasn't going to be enough for me to just walk away from all that. But as I say, 4 years of doing that, and then I was starting to get a bit older, and I thought, maybe it is now time to move on. And look, I was in tears leaving Glasgow, leaving my house, leaving the club, but it's only happy memories now when I look back.
Yeah.
There was a lot of focus on your fitness during your time at Celtic. A lot of it probably unfairly. Do you think that was unfair, or was there an issue there with your core fitness level? Maybe been brought up in Ulster fries and pints of Guinness. I don't know.
I was actually hurt, but I was brought up on it. It took me there was about 20 before I acquired a taste for Guinness. No, look, I think where I came from, Simon, basically, when I joined Celtic, and again, it was pretty last minute because I had nearly agreed to join. In fact, I had agreed to join West Brom and was at the training ground, agreed my contract, and, the medical was booked for the next day. Thankfully, Celtic had matched the offer with Derry then, and I was up a road and signed. But I had been injured for about 10, 12 weeks. I had a back injury, sort of back hamstring injury that West Brom were completely aware of. And, obviously this had been going on for a couple of months. And then when I signed for Celtic, I never really told anyone, or they maybe didn't know. And, as I sort of was at the club for a while, I realised then that, Gordon Strachan didn't sign me. It was actually Dermot Desmond signed me on the recommendation of a friend of his. So a lot of it made sense then. But I was sort of through straight into pre-season after being out, for maybe 3 months with an injury. I was obviously a good bit behind the rest of the lads. Broke down again after about a week because a Gordon Strachan pre-season's,
tough.
Very, very tough to say the least. So my body was nowhere near able for it. And, that first year I did struggle with injuries and fitness, and it really took me a while to get up to speed or what, even close to what the required levels of that fitness is. So that sort of stuck then for the next 5 years. But, that's where most of it came from.
Yeah. But you did, yeah. I mean, obviously at that point you said when Lenny picked you maybe 15 games in the spin, you were probably sort of motoring quite nicely at that point, eh?
Definitely. I actually remember that period, and it's probably the best I've ever felt in my career. I got myself really fit, and my body was in good shape. I had very little injuries that season. I think I made 36 or 37 appearances, got 6 or 7 goals. So, I really felt a proper first team player at that stage. And again, I was really looking to push on. Now, what didn't help me was Chris Cummins was signed in that January, and Chris came in, and it was sort of me and him vying for, that sort of attacking midfield wing position. And, Chris went on to have an unbelievable second half of the season, which sort of stifled my own game time. But, up until that sort of January, sort of mid-end of January, I felt like I was really starting to become what I always wanted to be in terms of a first team regular.
Aye. In fact, Chris Commons, did he not score in the first minute of his debut or something at Hampden? I'm pretty sure he did something very quick.
I had played the previous game. I think we played Dundee United, and listen, as a player, you play well, so I was fully expecting they started. I think it was a semi-final.
It was Aberdeen.
And, Aberdeen, and we, obviously Lenny named the team at the hotel before we left to go on the bus, and was pretty good at it. And, after waiting so long and being so patient, when I got the run I felt I'd done enough to start that game, and unfortunately, Lenny decided to play Chris, and lo and behold, a wee bit unlucky for me, he scores after I think it's 2 minutes, and has a good game. I think he might even have scored again in the game. I think he
Yeah.
might have scored two. So in terms of starts for him, it couldn't have went any better. But it was it was a personal disappointment for me.
The problem that a lot of people don't know, that watching and listening, they don't know that after getting a run of games like 15 games, that's when you're totally at your fitness, because it doesn't matter how hard you train. Unless you're match fitness, if you don't get that run of games, you're not up at the top weight. So you must have been gutted. All of a sudden, you've got there, you've reached your peak, and then Chris comes in and does that. Yeah, which is a bit of a nightmare, really, isn't it, for you?
And listen, I was, but I'm sure Lenny will tell you this. I wasn't high maintenance. I wasn't I wasn't one of them players that always banged on the door and demanded they know why I wasn't playing and stuff. You know, my thing was always try to just get my head down and keep working hard, keep trying to impress in training, or if I did get on for 10, 15 minutes or whatever, or Chris was rested, I try to impress. So, unfortunately for me, he did come in and have an impact straight away. And listen, he was an absolute goal threat, left or right foot. He was more of a goal threat than I was, without a doubt. I was more of a creator. But listen, he turned out to be a brilliant player for Celtic. And, there's no hard feelings. And
No.
at the end of the day, Lenny didn't owe me anything. He was there to win matches. And at the end of the day, he felt that was, the team he wanted to play. So, the one person I hold no sort of discontent or ill feeling towards at Celtic is Neil Lennon, because
Yeah.
he played me more than any other manager I had there by, a considerable distance. So, it was just one of them things in your career where if Chris hadn't signed that day and I had played and maybe scored and got a couple of goals, then, who knows what path the rest of my time there might have taken. But listen, it's one of them things. It's history now, and as I say, the good memories I have there far outweigh the bad ones.
Good.
So a couple of quick fire questions for you. So, who would you say was the best player you ever played alongside, of your best teammate, skill wise?
The best player I've ever played alongside, and again, he only played for Celtic for about 5 months, but it was probably Robbie Keane. Quickness of thought, finishing. Again, similar to myself, wasn't blessed with bluster and pace, but in terms of anticipating where the ball might go, or finding 2-3 yards of space, it was a level that I hadn't seen before. And I think he scored 21 goals from January to May, so it was frightening to watch him in training, and then obviously to take. And at this stage, we were by no means firing on all cylinders. We'd had quite a sticky season. It was Lenny's first season as sort of interim manager after Tony Mowbray had left. And
Yeah.
I just remember thinking, it makes sense now why he's had such an unbelievable career in the Premier League at some, top clubs, because his understanding and his quickness of thought was of a real top level.
And what about opponents? Who was your most difficult opponent, or someone you didn't like coming up against?
Listen, I only came up against this fellow once. It was the Argentinian right back Zanetti, who obviously
Not bad.
most of his career at Inter Milan. We played them in a pre-season friendly, and I've never felt as inferior as a footballer coming off a pitch in my life. No matter what he tried, if he tried to go outside him, he just put his arm across you. If he tried to go inside him, he just took it off you. And I like to think that most players in a one-on-one situation, I could give them something to think about, or cause them a few problems. But I have to say, when I come off that day, I just felt you have a long way to go here.
Yeah, you get some players like that. Yeah.
And another one I want to ask you, because this will appeal to a lot. We've got a lot of Irish that follow us as well, as you well imagine. How does Glasgow and Derry compare for a night out?
Pretty similar. People go out with the same reasons. They go out, have a bit of crack, enjoy themselves, and most people go home at the end of the night having to make a phone call the next day to find out how the night went. So it's pretty similar in that respect. But listen, two great cities,
Yeah.
two cities that I absolutely love. Obviously, Derry's my hometown city, and Glasgow's a city that as much as it has that sort of rivalry, running through it. It is just an amazing place to live, and it's an amazing place to socialise, and the people are just brilliant, and I love going back there. Unfortunately, I don't get back as often as what I would hope, but just a real superb city, and again, hopefully I can get back across more often.
Do you come back to the games sometimes? Do you get too much?
Um, I try to, Frank, but we us play on Saturdays. It's very difficult because and my own son, he's playing over here as
Of
well,
course.
so it's difficult to get across the games. I do try and get over for Q&As from time to time. But again, even they've become sort of few and far between now. We working full time over here as assistant manager at Glentoran. So look, when I do try and get over, and when I'm forced enough to do get over, I try and stay now for a day or two, and catch up with old friends, and getting invited across to do the semi-finals is always great. Obviously, spending time with Charlie and stayed
Yeah.
at Charlie's house that night. And
Brilliant.
Charlie had just left Celtic Heart, so he was feeling a wee bit sort of all over the place with what he was going to do next. So being able to spend a couple of days with him, and try and lift his head, and tell him not to worry about things, and it'll be all right. So look, getting across was brilliant, and
He's a good lad,
hopefully
Charlie,
get
isn't he?
across a bit more often.
I was going to say what he was going to do next was try to get his handicap down to scratch in golf.
It's not working. It's not working. He phoned me. I was speaking to him, and he was saying to me, "Management's no for him." He says I was having nightmares. He says, "What am I going to? What team I'm picking?" He says it was like I couldn't get out of my head. He says that's only part time. He says so I just couldn't see
No,
me.
listen, I had the same. I had the same with him, and I think Charlie's biggest mistake, and Charlie's one of my best mates, so he won't mind me saying this, but I always said to Charlie, he should maybe go on as a first team coach or an assistant
Yes.
first, and get his eyes open a wee bit to all the sort of tough sides of management, the sides that people on the outside don't see, and it very much is a 24/7 job. And I think with his personality and how he would be around the players, he'd be a brilliant coach or an assistant manager. So I hope the experience hasn't put him off too much, and I still think he's got loads to offer as a coach or a first team manager eventually. But he has to learn the ropes a wee bit first.
Well, that's what you're doing. I mean, you're still a young man,
Yeah.
and you're coaching now.
Wish you well, no, your
Aye,
career.
do you ever see yourself back at Celtic Park maybe in a coaching capacity?
I'm not sure, Simon. As I say, I don't look that much ahead.
Nice
I have
though.
a daughter at 7. I have a daughter at 17. Sorry?
It would be nice though, wouldn't it? It would certainly be nice.
Listen, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. As I'm sure everybody says, coaching or managing or still being involved in the games, it's a very close second to playing, and I'm sure coaching at Celtic or one of them top clubs must be incredible as well. But look, what I'm doing now at Glentoran, being assistant manager, I'm still only 41, and I'm learning all the time, and I really enjoy being on the pitch with the players, and assisting the manager. So look, gaining great experience, and really enjoying it, which is the main thing. I think, Frank, the biggest thing for Charlie was he wasn't enjoying it at all.
No.
He wasn't even enjoying the Saturday, and I think that's what left the old feeling with him. But I actually love what I do, and as much as it's tough and long hours and long days, it's very rewarding because see winning a game as a coach or a manager, it's so much more better feeling than winning as a player. And when you do get the ones and you do be challenging for trophies, it's much more meaningful, and you feel it.
Right.
You feel it that much more deeper, and it's it's a good environment to be in as well.
Do you still join in the training?
Well, obviously you seen me in Jersey last year, so the easy answer to that would be no. The belly doesn't allow it, unfortunately.
No, I know that feeling now, mate.
I noticed your hair's a good bit shorter than it was when you first appeared at Celtic as well. Have you kind of left that 70s kind of rock thing behind now?
I got that laser eye surgery so I could see properly. You know, for years I was just walking around not knowing what I looked like. But no, that was just a phase thing, and I don't know what kind of phase it was because I was the only one walking around like that. But I think the less said about that haircut, the better.
Fantastic. Oh, listen, we could talk to you all day, but time's kind of caught up with us a wee bit. But that was fantastic. And again, we always say to the guests that we've had on Zoom, be great to get Paddy in the studio.
Yeah, when you're over, Paddy, we spoke about that, didn't we? When you're over, give us a shout, and we'll get you in, and we can have a chat face to face. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
brilliant if you don't mind.
And so I mean, loads of things we probably didn't even get a chance to touch on, so we can revisit it next time you're in Glasgow. Would be fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. But wish you all
definitely, Simon. As I say, me and Frank, I'll keep in touch with that. Look, it's one of them ones where it could be 2 weeks, it could be 6 months. You just don't know. It's, you know, when I'm next over. But if I am coming over, then I'll definitely drop Frank a message, and if I've time, I'll definitely pop on for an hour.
If you're doing anything with Charlie, we get him in as well. Get the two of you in, it'll be a good laugh. That'll be a good show.
Aye, that'd be good. You could give him a week in a counselling session in front of us, you know, about his coaching career.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Well, listen, we'll leave it there then. Listen, Paddy McCourt, absolute Celtic legend, and you know that cliche of it. So that word's always thrown about. Total cult hero among the support. In fact, before we do finish, do you ever sing the Paddy McCourt song in the house to your kids?
Here we go.
I bet you
don't do it.
No.
Or do they sing it? Do they sing it to you?
There was a period, Simon, where, honest to God, I couldn't go anywhere in Glasgow without somebody singing it. So it got to the stage where the last place you wanted to hear it was a house. So it's banned in the McCourt household.
Oh, well, it's one of my favourites. One of my favourites. So, Paddy, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Paddy, and good luck with Glentoran.
We'll catch up with you hopefully again. Join us again for another episode of Let Me Be Frank, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.